Some classic works of art are being viewed in a whole new light, thanks to the woman Nancy Giles has been talking to.
Since 1865, when Edouard Manet's painting Olympia debuted in Paris, all eyes have been focused on the reclining nude gazing directly out at the viewer.
It was very controversial, this aspect of everyday life that has always been with us, the oldest profession.
A lady of the evening.
Yes.
A prostitute.
And this was something that was considered to be poor taste. It should be kept part of, the private domain.
Now look again, as curator Denise Murrell did.
There are two women in that painting. One is white, and that is what most of the art historical narrative is about. But the other is black.
At a recent New York exhibition, based on Denise Murrell's doctoral dissertation, she assembled artwork from Manet to Matisse to African-American artists like Romare Bearden and Laura Wheeler Waring, to illustrate the role of black models in modern art, starting with the black maid from Olympia.
So what is Manet intending to say? Even though art historians are not saying very much,
right.
I believe he intended for us to pay attention. I mean, this material is not hidden. It's just like the model, she's in plain view, but she's made invisible by the lack of historical interest.
But in Manet's own notebook, Murrell found the model's name, Laure, whom he described as a très belle négresse, a very beautiful black woman.
What Manet does is bring this figure into the present moment and say that French society is an interracial society, that people of color are part of modern France.
See, I love the brush strokes on that.
Manet would paint Laure twice more, in Portrait of Laure and in Children in the Tuileries Gardens. And the fourth Manet painting to feature a black female model was of the celebrated French poet Charles Baudelaire's mistress. Her name?
Jeanne Duval. She is a biracial actress. I think Manet's captured her as she was described by Baudelaire's biographer at the time, a colored girl, tall, who carried herself like a queen.
The exhibition goes on to show Manet's influence on his contemporaries, like Frederic Bazille, and artists from the Harlem Renaissance.
When we look at the artists working in the 1920s, often after having spent time in Europe, they came back to Harlem, to Chicago, to the black cities being formed in America, and they portrayed every scene of modern life as well.
Henri Matisse is one of many European artists who drew inspiration from Harlem.
Matisse was visiting jazz clubs. He was seeing black theater, and he knew some of the luminaries of the Harlem Renaissance. So we see him a decade later back in France working with black models, sort of stripping away a lot of the markers of ethnicity, of race that had been typical of European portrayals of black women before.
And today, artist Mickalene Thomas pays homage to Manet in her work.
She is fabulous.
Mickalene's den, she names her model, but she also describes her as une très belle négresse.
There we go
directly
again.
citing Manet's description of Laure.
It's about them looking out at you and demanding to be seen, demanding the validation, look at me. I'm here, I exist, I'm present.
I love the fact that you use rhinestones, all kinds of textures. I'm fascinated by her fro.
You want to touch that fro, don't you?
I know.
At her Brooklyn studio, Thomas explains it's that validation that's part of what Manet intended by including Laure in Olympia.
He wanted to talk about her,
Of course
and
he
that's
did.
why there's this justice to the artist. You know, when you omit what they're doing, when you deliberately say, no, we're not going to talk about that.
Which is why, for Thomas, this art is about more than just the past. It's also about the future.
For so long for me, and images that I would see at museums, I would think, why don't I see myself? We are part of this larger picture and culture. Why aren't we here in these spaces? That's why it's very important to make the work that I do, because I see what happens when young girls go to the museums and they see my work on the wall.
Tell me about it.
They see themselves.
Denise Murrell's exhibit is now in Paris at the Musée d'Orsay, and she's hoping this new perspective on modern art will have a lasting legacy.
We want to open up, first of all, the way we look at those works, because many of them do have portrayals of women of color.
Right.
But we also want to introduce artists who've been marginalized, women artists, artists of color.
You never know whose life you may transform by just an image of recognition and representation.